What's going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aiden, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, we have discussed heavily on a lot of players recently, discussing their futures with the Chicago Bulls and potentially other teams in the future. But one person that I do feel like, again, no one is really talking about is a guy that doesn't get a lot of game time for the Chicago Bulls, has spent 2 seasons in the G League for the majority, and is still holding up a roster spot for the Chicago Bulls. He is a center. He was picked in the second round. His name is Marko Simonović. Today, we're going to discuss the big decision that needs to be made, both from the players' side of things and from, obviously, the front office and the Bulls side of things, because I think there's only so long that this guy is going to come in and, I guess, hold up a roster spot for the Chicago Bulls that can be used elsewhere. So I guess this is going to be the video discussing what the future will be for Marko Simonović, at least in my opinion. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show, turn notifications on, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls and whether or not you believe Marko Simonović will be a Chicago Bull next season and for future years to come. Now, what's disappointing about Marko Simonović is I think we've all seen some glimpses and obviously the disappointments in his game. For example, his first season was probably a season that I think we're all very patient about. We all wanted to see how he would do at the NBA level, but unfortunately, very rarely did we get to see that chance for Marko Simonović. He spent most of the time in the G League. I think throughout his first season in the G League, he gradually got better every single time, which led to a lot of Bulls fans saying, okay, we're taking the long-term here, long-term development. It's not the end of the world. He's still holding up a roster spot, but again, you have the faith that he will be able to play for the Chicago Bulls at some point. You get to the Summer League. His Summer League was unbelievable. There was maybe one game where he had a really bad game, but the other games, he was just absolutely phenomenal. And it just made you believe, all right, there's a future here with Marko. Yes, it's just the Summer League, but we saw some players that are playing in the NBA right now that had nowhere near the Summer League that Marko had. So if you gave him the chance at the NBA level, who's to say what would end up happening for Marko Simonović? He might have had a fantastic season. He might have had an average season. Maybe the faith would have been lost, but at least then you would at least know the future of Marko Simonović with the Chicago Bulls. But then once you roll over into the second season, it's back into the G League. It's back playing in those games where he looks phenomenal in the G League, but it never translates to the NBA because, one, he never gets a chance to translate that over into the NBA, and two, the only minutes that he does get in the NBA is garbage time, which, to be fair, in those small amounts of minutes that he's played, he didn't really capitalize on it. But again, it's very hard to do something like that when you're only playing around 10 minutes a season, essentially. I think Terry Taylor, who came in, I think towards the second half of the season, again, who's a two-way contract player, he's got more game time than Marko. I'm positive of it. So Marko, who's been here for 2 seasons, and Terry Taylor's come in and probably averages more minutes than him in both seasons. It's one of those situations where I just don't know the direction that the Bulls are really taking with Marko. There are a couple of times where if you're not playing Andre Drummond, you have Marko there that can play. But it looks like we're still trying to take this long-term approach. And there's only 2 reasons why I believe we are taking a long-term approach with Marko. One, Bulls really have faith that he could be the next big thing for the Chicago Bulls, and that a G League is where it has to grow. Get your confidence in the G League, so eventually in the NBA, where, to be fair, the scouting reports won't be written for Marko, essentially. You know, there's not going to be a lot on Marko there. He could be able to play his game effectively at the NBA level. Or 2, we have no faith at all in Marko, and he's only here to just see whether or not what happens. Because 2 years in the G League now, in my opinion, is just, for a guy that's holding a main roster spot for the Chicago Bulls, it's something that I'm not too thrilled about, to see him only get G League minutes and him not even get really a sniff at the NBA level. And maybe he's not ready for it. Maybe it is a long-term approach. But again, I just feel like there are different ways the Bulls can handle this to make sure that we're not sitting here saying, why is there a roster spot wasted on Marko? What can we do to make sure that that roster spot can go to better hands? Because let's be honest, our needs are still our needs. We need shooting, we need size, we need rim protection, we need a point guard. Marko has a spot there that can be filled by somebody else. So as much as we all want to hope that Marko can get an opportunity with this Bulls team, I just think at this point in time, if you're not going to play him on this team, then you got to find a way to make that spot available for somebody else. And that's the question I guess I'll bring to your table today. How can we do that? Well, let's talk about Marko Simonovic's contract. I believe he's going to be a restricted free agent in 2024. He's basically signed a 3-year deal for the Chicago Bulls, but his next upcoming contract for this season coming up, the 2023-2024 season, is actually non-guaranteed. So essentially, the Bulls, I believe, have until the 7th of July, 2023 to identify whether or not that the Bulls are willing to guarantee Marko's contract. If they guarantee Marko's contract, I believe, of course, he will just have the same spot he's had for the last 2 seasons. He will have a guaranteed roster spot for the Chicago Bulls. He will be on the roster. He will take up that spot. And, of course, the Bulls will have the decision. Do they play Marko Simonović? Do they send him back to the G League for another season? Personally, the way that I see it, if you're going to play him in the G League, I think it's absolutely essential that you try and find him on a 2-way contract, because I've said this for a while and I stand by this statement. I believe Terry Taylor eventually will be on the Chicago Bulls main team. I believe we will upgrade him from a 2-way contract spot into a main roster spot. I really believe that. I could be wrong, but that's how I feel in my heart of hearts right now. Marko is someone that I don't see getting any minutes next season, unfortunately, because we're still going to need rim protection and we're still going to need a center that's going to be able to play good defense. Marko's not that guy. So I can't see him getting minutes for the Chicago Bulls next season. So the best you could do, if you want to keep him around, you got to find a way to put him on a 2-way contract. You got to find a way to send him to the G League. He could get called up in case of emergencies. He gets limited game time for that 2-way contract spot, and he doesn't take a roster spot away if we end up making the playoffs. Because I do feel like a main roster spot has to be given to somebody else. Someone that is at least going to get some elements of game time. Even if it's a Goran Dragic type player. That towards the end of his season with the Bulls, he didn't play a lot. He was a guy that came in here or there, or played 2 or 3 minutes a game. But it was in big minutes. It was in big events, big occasions. It wasn't garbage time. Marko, all he's getting is garbage time minutes. I feel like you could do that as a 2-way contract player. You don't need to have a main contract on the Chicago Bulls to play garbage time minutes in some of those games. You just don't. And if he's going to spend the majority of his time in the G League, I only think it makes sense to put him on a 2-way contract. So that's how I think the Chicago Bulls should handle this situation. Will they handle it in that direction? I honestly don't know. Maybe there's no possible way they can do that. But again, 3 years. And in all 3 years, I really feel like he's not going to get a chance at the NBA level. So at that point, you also just begin to question, what is his future? Does he even deserve a 2-way contract spot? I don't know. But we're probably going to see another preseason and another situation where we're looking at Marko getting better and better, getting physically more defined. He looks much better physically in his second season than his first season. I expect the same thing's going to happen in his third season. We'll see what the outcomes may be. Now, before I go, the second round of the NBA playoffs has begun, and for some teams, it's going to begin. I mentioned that I did a, prediction of some of the series in the first round. I'm going to do the same thing in the second round, essentially, ladies and gentlemen. So, let's start off with the Eastern Conference. You got Miami and the New York Knicks. Miami first the Milwaukee Bucks and caused one of the biggest upsets in NBA history. The whole situation where Giannis said his season wasn't a failure. I believe it was a failure personally, but nevertheless, it is what it is. Miami with a very, very good win over the New York Knicks in the first game. Obviously, without Julius Randle, the Knicks and the Heat are going to be the first series to talk about. The Knicks stunned the Cleveland Cavaliers as well. And to be honest, that was a little bit more disappointing to me than how I view the Milwaukee Bucks and Miami Heat game. Just because I really put a lot of faith into Cleveland, and it really wasn't reciprocated on the court. It was a really flat, disappointing 5-game series for the Cleveland Cavaliers, in all honesty. So New York deserve to be where they are right now. To be honest, with Julius Randle, I think New York will probably have the slight upper hand. I know Miami are the 8th seed and they stunned the 1st seed, but Miami's in a situation now where they're going to have to prove whether or not that was a fluke or not. You know, if you go past the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round, you know, the 6th time ever that an 8th seed beat the 1st seed, and then you go and beat the New York Knicks, you show that was deserved. You show that was not a fluke. You show that you're serious in the Eastern Conference no matter what position you are. Which I feel like that's the thing the Miami Heat needs to prove now. They're 1-0 up against New York. I'm going to go with New York to win this series as well. I'm going to pick them in 7 games. I think this will go down to the wire because of the way that both teams played. Very, very compact, very defensive-minded. I think all those games are going to be very low scoring. There's not going to see a game where you're going to go 130, 140 points. You're not going to see that in this series. And I think both teams are extremely well coached. So I'm expecting a very competitive series. If you're in for defensive-minded play, if you like to see teams put a shift in defensively, you want to see hard work, I think this is the series to watch because I think both of those teams are going to bring it every single night on that end. Moving into the second, I guess, Eastern Conference matchup, you've got Philadelphia and Boston. I feel like every single playoff series, in some way, form, or fashion, these teams are connected to each other. I don't know what it is. But I have a couple of Boston friends that are feeling very confident in this series against Philadelphia. And to be fair, if you're the Boston Celtics, you should feel confident in every series. And you got to the NBA Finals last year. You're the favorites probably now to get there again. You're probably the favorites to win the championship this season because Milwaukee are out. So you should feel confident. But Philly, they had a very good series against Brooklyn. I want to give a huge shout out to the Brooklyn Nets for making most of those games competitive. And a couple of times out, I thought they could have had a game or two in that series, but a couple of very bad mistakes. Again, Nicholas Claxton getting ejected in one of those games. I felt like if he stayed, that Brooklyn Nets would have won that game. So there was a lot of controversy in that series. They did a good job against Philly, I would say, but obviously Philly swept them, which is what I expected. And I did expect Boston to win in 6 as well. How do I view this series? Well, I kind of view how every single game between Boston and Philly will end up going. I think Joel Embiid will get his own stats. Boston likes to play a little bit smaller in terms of they got Robert Williams and Al Horford as their two big men. Of course, Al Horford, he's a massive guy, but he kind of plays a little bit more outside, perimeter-based. He's not going to really be getting, I guess, banging with Joel Embiid, I guess you could say. No homo there. But anyway, essentially, how I feel is Joel Embiid is going to get the majority of his stats, which is probably what Boston will allow him to do. But Boston will be looking to stop everybody else from scoring. They're going to look to slow down James Harden in terms of his shot-making ability and his playmaking. Definitely going to try and slow down Tyrese Maxey. And in my opinion, Boston has one of the best defensive lineups in the NBA. So I think they're going to absolutely smother Philadelphia. But I do see this being a competitive series. I think Boston are going to win once again in 6 games. I don't see Boston sweeping this series, because I think Philadelphia is too good to be swept in any series. I think they'll get a game. Joel Embiid's an MVP caliber player. And one of those games, 2 of those games maybe, James Harden's going to erupt for points. Or Tobias Harris is going to erupt for points. So, again, I don't think it's going to be an easy series for Boston. But I do expect them to be comfortable. And I expect them to win in those 6 games. Moving out into the West. The West is probably a little bit more interesting. I love the matchups that we're going to be seeing from the Western Conference. You got the Denver Nuggets and you got the Phoenix Suns. Both series, very interesting. I think Denver were dominant in their series against Minnesota. With all due respect to Minnesota, they got a game out of it, which fair play to them. They did well in that regard. But Denver, in my opinion, are a dangerous team. They can play inside, they can play outside. They're a great three-pointer shooting team. They've got Jokic as an MVP caliber player facilitating it all. Even if you don't have Jokic, you got guys like Jamal Murray, he always raises his game in the playoffs. It's like we're going to see playoff Murray in a couple of seasons' time where people are going to say, oh my God, it's the playoffs. Jamal Murray's going to be that guy, you know? And Phoenix, they won this in 5. I predicted the Clippers to win personally. But again, Kawhi Leonard not being there, Paul George not being there. I think just too much to overcome for the LA Clippers, unfortunately. And Phoenix, they looked good. Here's how I think it's going to work. Because I feel like Denver structurally are probably better than Phoenix in the sense that I think they know their game a little bit more. They are a team that knows where everybody's going to be. They know what they're good at. They know what they're bad at. And I think Denver has the much better bench. The way that I see it, if Phoenix has those guys like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant stepping up every single game, Phoenix will probably win that series. But if Phoenix can't deliver those good scoring nights every single night, their bench is going to have to step up for them. And so far, I'm not too confident about the Phoenix Suns bench. So I feel like, once again, Denver's going to walk away with a win in this timeout. I think at this point, if Denver loses, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a choke like they were in previous seasons. But what I would say is they need to, at some point, try to level up their seasons. You know, getting eliminated in the second round every single season, you know, it's not good for them. It's not good for where they want to be. You know, they work so well in the regular season. They have to prove it on the playoff stage. With Phoenix, they've been to the NBA Finals. Kevin Durant's won an NBA championship. They've been there. They've done it before. So I think the experience will be on Phoenix's side. But I think structurally, the way the team's constructed, Denver has the better team in my eyes. Maybe not the better players, but the better team. So I do feel like Denver should win that series. Will they win it? I don't know. But I think I'm going to pick Denver. I'll probably pick it in 7 games as well. Last but not least, LeBron and Curry going back at it once again. The LA Lakers will versus the Golden State Warriors. Can I just say that Warriors and Kings series, it was unbelievable. Every single game, I was excited, man. I was so thrilled to watch those games. They were beautiful games. They were really, really good. Very, very good offensive games. Exciting, energetic, fast-paced. That's what a basketball series should be about in my eyes. Keeping everybody entertained from game 1 to game 7. And the Kings were this close. They lost by 20, I believe, at the end of the day. But Golden State, they're the reigning champions for a reason. And that's why I picked them in the end, because Sacramento had to prove it on the big stage. And although they got eliminated, I say they did prove it. Because again, I think if they versed anybody else in that Western Conference, they probably get through. I think if they versed the Phoenix or the Clippers, I think they go through. I think if they versed Memphis or the Lakers, they probably would go through. But the Warriors have been there and done that countless times as a team. The exact same team as well. So they had to prove it on the big stage. Golden State may have walked through to the next round, but I think Sacramento definitely held their own in that series. And I think they proved it on the big stage, even in a loss. Fair play to them. That's what I call a successful season for them. Even though they got out in the first round, it's very, very different from Milwaukee to Sacramento. Sacramento were versing the reigning champions and brought it to them tooth and nail. Milwaukee lost to the 8th seed, who didn't win both play-in tournament games. They only won one. So that's how I feel like, you know, Sacramento had a successful season. Milwaukee had a failed season in my eyes. But again, looking at the Memphis and Lakers series, a lot of trash talk. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I watch those series. Dylan Brooks chirping again, and LeBron and the Lakers just minding their own business and handling business at the end of the day. Obviously, Ja Morant, big topic of discussion there. I'm not going to give any excuses to the Memphis Grizzlies, because we have seen in the past, Memphis do play well without Ja Morant. So I understand Ja Morant was injured and Memphis probably took a hit because of that. But I'm not going to put any excuses under the Memphis Grizzlies name. I've seen them play well without Ja Morant. So I do believe they could have won the series regardless if Ja Morant was out for a couple of games or not. The Lakers got it done, and they were the better team in the series. That's what I think about the situation. Who would win between Golden State and the LA Lakers? It's like a blast of the past, you know, LeBron and Curry. Who wouldn't want to see that series again? Different uniform for LeBron, but interesting game. Again, I have to go with the reigning champions here. I'm going to pick the Golden State Warriors, and I'm going to pick them in 6 games. But the Lakers are a team, the way that they're playing right now, they'll cause a problem for anybody. If the Lakers, in my opinion, get past the Golden State Warriors, I very much believe they're in a chance to go all the way to the NBA Finals. I just think, you know, you versed Memphis, the 2nd seed, and you dealt with them pretty comfortably, I would say. You versed the Golden State Warriors. If you get past them comfortably, as much and as good as Denver and Phoenix are, I don't think they're levels above those Golden State Warriors and Memphis Grizzlies teams. So if the Lakers can swoop in as the 7th seed, beat the Golden State Warriors coming up, you know, it's possible. I wouldn't say it's out of the realms of possibility. They can go that extra mile, and I do think they can go into the NBA Finals. And then if you go into the NBA Finals, LeBron, AD, you know, they're a team to be watchful for, but we'll have to wait and see overall. I would pick the Golden State Warriors, though. Again, they've been there, they've done it before. Their team's been the same and consistent for a long time. They know what it takes. Just because they struggle in the regular season does not mean they're going to struggle in the playoffs. But again, they got to figure out their away form. I know they won a game away from home against Sacramento, their last game, obviously. They've got to figure it out. They've got to figure out how to win away more consistently. That has to be the goal for Golden State. If they can get that done, they're a dangerous team to win the championship. That's it for my predictions, and that's it for the video on Marko as well. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. Enjoy the 20-minute video. Again, I do want to give my predictions throughout the whole course of the season and the playoffs. You know, the Bulls are not in it. I understand that. People might turn off the video right after Marko's part. But for those who stuck around, hopefully you're enjoying the NBA playoffs, and there's more to come. More action to come, more competitive games to come. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care, and peace.